Hi, everyone. This is the Devlog for Tundra Feed and Supply Company's submission to Mini Jam 150 Magic. So, this was a game jam that was being held on Itch. This was the first one I had intended to do under the Tundra Feed and Supply Company name. The theme was magic, and the limitation was light is the way. That limitation I found very intriguing. I have not worked a ton with light in 2D games in Godot 4. So I was immediately drawn towards, what can the player see? Illumination, how can I, what are game mechanics surrounding hiding things or things becoming visible? Light is the way also gave a pretty strong direction in terms of what the game mechanics should be going for. I felt movement was going to be really critical in this. So I've done a few game jams recently, and I fell victim to feature creep. And all of those, my scope was just way too great for the time that I had to work on those. So I wanted to go with something very, very straightforward, and that ended up directing me, especially with Light is the Way, towards doing essentially a platformer, a side-scroller. I wanted explicitly to stay away from programming AI, enemy interactions, because that I love doing that stuff, and that frequently grows out of control for me. So I decided to go with something that wasn't going to have AI in it. What I ended up doing as I was working through it, so I started off with assets. After creating the repository and setting up a basic agile board and putting up my initial issues, I immediately started in on some basic assets. I find that if my project that I'm working on feels polished, then that really inspires me to work more on it. Pretty much, and this, of course, right, this is a huge generalization. However, games in many cases are just polish. And by that, I mean, right, the difference between an impressive AAA menu and a menu that you can put together in 2 minutes is frequently just polish. Functionally, they can both play the game, they can both quit the game, so on and so forth. But it really is that polish. And that's also the same thing when you look at games and you start talking about feedback. If you were to look at games like Destiny or Doom, what are the things that separate them from their initial incarnations? I'll harken back to Marathon in regards to Destiny, and then of course the original Doom for Doom. And really, it's just the gameplay mechanics are pretty much the same. It's just there is increased polish there. So that's an aside. That's a conversation for another time. However, so I started off with the assets. I'm a software engineer. I have never been trained formally in doing in artwork or things like that. So this is something that I'm working on in my free time, but still very much. That's why it's still very much in its infancy, I suppose. So that's why the artwork probably does not look too impressive. That being said, I got that sort of finished up and into the game, and I created the tile set and the tile map, and the initial sort of the light for where you're supposed to be going, the portal that you were supposed to be traveling towards, and then light around the player character, and I thought things were looking really nice. I started to work with shadows, and this happens to me a lot in game jams. I experiment very frequently and perhaps too much. But that's what I view game jams for. I'm often not aiming to place or something along those lines. I'm looking for inspiration, something to push me, pull me outside of my comfort zone, do something I wouldn't initially do without the theme or without the limitation, for instance, imposed upon it. So I don't shy away from experimentation. However, of course, that in this case, that wound up hurting me simply because I was too focused on, hey, I haven't worked with light in a 2D Godot 4 game before, so let's see what I can do. Ultimately, none of the things that I was able to develop turned into anything fun. At best, they felt like gimmicks. At one point in time, I worked on particles for the player death animation for quite a while, and then ultimately, right, you're in with the way that the light works in the game, you could never see those because they weren't illuminated. And then, I worked on that a little bit more to try and see if there was a good way to show that or what else I could do in the game, have them stick around longer, so on and so forth. And nothing ultimately materialized into something that felt fun or really looked good. At the end of the day, everything that I create, I would like to improve someone's day. And, and explicitly, I would like people to walk away feeling that they had gained something, whether that's in something they've learned or just enjoy, having a good time. This particular submission didn't feel like it was coming together in that manner. So with all that being said, having spent a lot of time experimenting towards features and just never coming together with a core that felt good, a core gameplay loop that I or other players would want to iterate on, I ended up calling it on the final day and not submitting. Ultimately, I think my biggest takeaway is, and I've done plenty of game jams before, but I feel like this is something that could always be emphasized, is, of course, make sure that your scope is managed. Try to avoid feature creep. However, a critical component is also make sure that you identify an entertaining mechanic early on, because without an entertaining mechanic, you just have a bog standard game that you're creating. And with all that there, I didn't want to release this because I didn't feel like there was something unique and that people would be having fun with it. So for future game jams, something I will definitely focus upon is hammer out that initial mechanic that is actually going to be fun, and work on that until you go, yeah, this is something that I don't even need a game around this. This is just something that it itself is fun. That was something famously that happened with Gears of War development early on, before Gears of War was Gears of War. They had just, supposedly, the development team had just played around with third-person cover shooting mechanics and just played in a completely gray environment until that felt fun, until that alone was something that people wanted to do. And then they built the rest of Gears of War around that. That's supposedly how that story went. So, ultimately, I didn't submit for this game jam. However, I learned a lot. I had a lot of fun doing this. I'm very excited for the next one that I get to participate in. And on top of that, I aim to do devlogs as frequently as is interesting or is as possible when I do a game jam. Hopefully, for future ones, there will be a game associated with it for people to go and play. Though until that time, this was also something that I wanted to do. I still felt, even with ultimately not submitting, I felt like there were some valuable takeaways, and that was something that I just wanted to talk about from a game design and development perspective. So that also brings me over to plans for the channel and what a section I'm calling Q&A. Speaking with some of the viewers recently, people have noted, hey, these topics are really interesting. Though you're very concise, you're very to the point. It's very specific about do this, do that, do this. So the reason why I have done it that way is, having done game development for coming up on a decade now, and then also being a software engineer, I've watched countless tutorials and programming videos, and you'll click on a video, you're just looking for a quick answer, and you get a 2-minute long intro, you get side stories, you get things that aren't applicable to the video title, so on and so forth. And what I aim to do is create the maximum amount of value for the minimum amount of time investment. And that's initially where the idea for some of these topics that I was talking about was coming from. Was, okay, how can I deliver the information that I have gained over a long amount of time in just a quick and clear format? And so, right from the first video, I took some more detours and explained the code and some of the issues, like called deferred and the physics process and things like that a little bit more. I thought that video was going to be something along the lines of 5 minutes. And then it turned out to be 15. So in the very next video, in the C# one, I was a little bit faster, and I cut some stuff out, and I got that to 13. In the following one, the third video, which is about top-down character movement, that one is super specific. It's very straight and to the point. Pretty concise. That one's pretty robotic. And I always want to improve on, in being able to discuss and teach these concepts. However, that being said, I will always try to provide super concise and helpful tutorial videos, while then also separately providing longer, in-depth videos. So I will always try to provide concise videos that get exactly to the point and tell exactly what you need to know in order to do something functionally. However, at the same time, I would like to provide separate videos that are in-depth, cover a topic in great detail, and hopefully teach concepts in a manner that help people walk away with a thorough understanding of the feature, the mechanic, or what they're trying to work upon. So in that case, those will always sort of remain as two distinct things. That being said, the concise ones always have room for better instruction, of course. So that's something that I will always work upon, and hopefully I can improve upon. Plans for the channel: I would really like to continue to do these concise, to the point tutorials. I always feel there's value out there for that, having searched around for stuff myself and just looked for answers. I also intend to do, as I was just speaking about, long form videos that cover a topic completely, whether you are a beginner or advanced, and yet you still walk away having learned something new, hopefully. On top of that, I'd like to do these devlogs, talk about game development, and so on and so forth. And those are just the initial ideas. As we go along, depending on what the community would like me to talk about or show and work on, there might be new formats, new topics, new tutorials, new things like that to talk about. I also intend to branch out beyond just Godot. There's a lot I could talk about with web development, with Python, with C#. There's significant topics to talk about there, and so those are always as well other concepts that I'd like to talk about. To add to that, I also want to cover deeper computer science topics, Big O notation, Turing machines. I mean, just go run the gamut. So hopefully this channel can be a place of immense value for other developers and people studying and looking to learn, or just doing this as a hobby, or doing this as a career, so on and so forth. So that is pretty much it for now. As always, new video next Monday. They're typically scheduled to be published at 1 p.m. AKST. That's Alaska Standard Time. So, feel free to reach out to me or to leave comments and let me know. I'm always happy to answer questions or make videos about certain topics to dive deep in on certain things, or just quick tutorials if people would like. So please feel free to reach out anytime. If not, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again next Monday. And thank you so much.